skeletal figure, Dwight Harvelt, gazes into a magical orb addressing the hero he lost. He ponders if he will ever see her again once he has finished building the world she envisioned. Dwight remembers a time when he stood beside the most important person to him, looking out at a strange, crystalline landscape. In the present, a furious crowd jeers from a fortress wall, calling them wicked monsters and traitors. An official commands the crowd to be silent. The official formally introduces the sage, Dwight Harvelt. He also introduces the hero, Claire Barton. He proclaims that these are the names of the ones who defeated the demon lord that sought to plunge the world into darkness. Dwight's thoughts drift to Claire, recalling her as a rare hero and a comrade who fought alongside him through countless missions. Most importantly, she was the one and only person he holds dear. The official's tone turns accusatory, declaring that the souls of these former heroes have become rotten and that they plotted to become the next demon lords, sentencing them to the Valley of the Dead. Dwight vehemently denies the accusations, shouting that it is impossible for them to become the next demon lords. He insists that someone must have conspired against them after they defeated the demon lord. The crowd dismisses his pleas as nonsense, calling him evil. He struggles against his restraints, frustrated that the shackles prevent him from casting spells. The king calls them minions of the brutal demon lord. He renounces his decision to honor them as heroes. He condemns them to pay for their sins with death. Desperate, Dwight urges Claire to run away, believing they can escape together. Claire calmly refuses, reminding him that they both longed for a peaceful world. Dwight looks on, stunned by her words. She states that if her sacrifice can help achieve that peace, she will gladly accept it. She explains that the people now fear them for having the power to kill a demon lord and that he could have escaped on his own. Claire points out that even if he disappeared, no one would bother to search for him. Dwight can only listen in stunned silence, unable to accept her reasoning. Claire's thoughts drift to a simpler time by a campfire, admitting she just wanted to keep living alongside him. He asks her what she means. She turns to Dwight, apologizing for getting him involved in this fate. With a serene expression, Claire thanks Dwight for standing by her side through everything. Overwhelmed, Dwight's eyes widen in denial. He can only whisper no. As an executioner raises his weapon and the command is given, Dwight cries out in anguish, insisting that he is the one who should be apologizing. A massive bolt pierces through Dwight's chest. He looks on in shock. Immediately after, Claire is also struck down, a faint, tragic smile on her face as she dies, while Dwight watches in horror. The crowd erupts in cheers. Dwight's final moments are filled with curses and sorrow. He questions if this brutal outcome, this world where people celebrate their deaths, is truly what the hero wanted. The king's face twists into a cruel, triumphant grin as Dwight looks up in shock. A volley of arrows is loosed directly at him. The arrows find their mark, and Dwight falls through the darkness. For a brief instant, everything becomes clear. As he plummets into the abyss, he feels he has finally grasped the true essence of the world. In the ensuing darkness, he loses all sense of time, unable to confirm how much has passed. He recalls Claire's gentle smile and her questioning why he had to follow her. He has spent what feels like an eternity in this desolate place, embracing her decaying body amidst a sea of bones. In this land of the dead, he alone has taken the strange form of an undead, his existence fueled by an extraordinary grudge that prevented him from simply disappearing. He questions why he is here and why the corpse of his first love is exposed. After endless self-interrogation to keep his consciousness from fading, he has an epiphany. He realizes the world was already broken, and Claire had made no mistake. He speaks to her memory, acknowledging the hero's good intentions but recognizing her methods were wrong. He believes her desire for peace was not mistaken. He vows to carry out her will. He sees it as his duty as her aide. He reflects that they were both right and wrong. Her mistake was surrendering to the flow of the people. He now must fix this broken world and create peace in a more effective way. To achieve this, he must first erase the strayed ones. But as he is now, he is powerless and needs strength enough to make the world see him as an enemy. He surveys the endless miasma of the Valley of the Dead, noting that though harmful to the living, it is a source of power for high undead. He decides to try absorbing it. He is immediately racked with unimaginable pain as the grief and experiences of countless souls flood his being, an amount of information no living brain could tolerate. Though paralyzed by the agony, he cannot even move. He endures for the sake of his revenge and his vision of peace. When the pain finally subsides, he has recovered. He has devoured all the miasma in the valley. A tremendous, chaotic magical power now flows within him. It is a power surpassing even the demon lord they once defeated. With this new power comes a new understanding. He raises every corpse in the valley, turning them into his own skeleton army. He silently questions why. He gave the command without distinction, yet he is puzzled to find that Claire's skeleton is the only one that did not move. He decides the first to be rewarded will be those who brought about her death. He begins to walk across his new army. Atop a mountain of bones under a stormy sky, Dwight declares that if this era denies them, he will oppose it. He vows that he will create a world where the just do not suffer. Carrying Claire's skeletal remains, he arrives at a fortress where guards spot him. The guards are stunned, wondering aloud if he is an undead. The story of revenge begins as Dwight, now a skeleton, stands over a fallen guard. The other guards recoil in fear, shouting in disbelief that he is no ordinary skeleton. Dwight effortlessly swats a soldier away. The remaining soldiers yell in a panic, calling for archers to shoot him down. Arrows fly straight through Dwight's ribcage, having no effect whatsoever. The archers watch in disbelief as their attack fails completely. A soldier screams in terror at the sight. A newly turned ghoul grabs a living soldier, who screams for help. Another guard points in terror as his fallen comrade's corpse begins to move. Dwight observes the transformation, realizing it is the effect of his miasma turning them into ghouls. The guards cry out in alarm as skeletons climb the walls one after another. A commander shouts for his troops to fall back and call for reinforcements, acknowledging the skeletons' numerical advantage. The horde of skeletons swarms and overwhelms a soldier in the blink of an eye. Another soldier swings his mace in desperation, cursing the undead scum. He observes his new army, now bolstered by the reanimated soldiers who have become ghouls. Having achieved his goal, Dwight states he no longer has any business here. The undead army has grown into a massive horde. Dwight internally promises the citizens of the royal capital that he is coming for them. The army marches towards the distant capital, as Dwight vows to be the one to destroy them all. A messenger bursts in to address the king. He delivers the grave news that the fortress has fallen and an undead horde is approaching the capital. The king issues orders to gather holy mages and prevent the undead from getting near the castle. The defenders sound the alarm as the undead horde is sighted. Soldiers on the wall express their shock at the size of the approaching army. Dwight notes that the defenders knew they were coming and prepared themselves. He assesses their strategy of using archers from the rear as a standard but decent plan. Dwight looks up as a sky full of arrows descends upon his army. The volley of arrows pierces through the ranks of the undead. Dwight is shown unharmed inside a magical shield as arrows rain down around him. The aftermath shows many skeletons pierced with arrows, but Dwight notes the plan was missing something. The defenders watch, having underestimated them as a simple undead horde, which is why their sorcerers have not yet joined the fight. Dwight declares he will show them his true self as he gathers magic. He commands them to behold his power. A huge ball of dark magic is fired towards the wall. The wall explodes violently and the soldiers are obliterated. Dwight calmly observes the results of his spell, noting he is strong enough to breach the gates. Looking at the massive hole in the wall, he internally compares his current strength to his past life, acknowledging he has become much stronger. The city streets erupt into chaos as citizens flee in terror from an explosion. In the desperate stampede, people shove one another out of the way to escape. Skeletons begin to seize civilians, who are kicked aside by others trying to flee. A lone child is left crying on the ground, trampled in the rush. A lone skeleton stands amidst the chaos, observing the scene. He reflects that these were the people she tried to protect, the same ones who celebrated his downfall knowing nothing. A citizen throws a rock at the skeleton's head, telling it not to come any closer. A group of children point accusingly at the undead. A man screams at him, calling him a demon. The crowd collectively shouts that the invaders are demons. As the people cower, Dwight reflects on their accusations. He concludes that he has become exactly what they wanted him to be. A line of holy archers takes aim at the lone skeleton, preparing to fire. He identifies the glowing arrowheads as being infused with holy attribute magic. Dwight acknowledges that this magic is the best weapon to use against the undead. He clenches his fist, resolving that he will never let them hurt her again. The commander gives the order to shoot. A volley of holy arrows rains down, causing a massive explosion. Dwight's vessel is struck by the holy arrows, and he cries out in pain. He feels his body being purified, and his bones collapsing under the immense pain. The skeleton's skull falls to the ground as the body disintegrates. The archers cheer, believing they have successfully taken down the leader. However, a dark aura begins to emanate from the other skeletons in the horde. A new skeleton's eyes begin to glow as it reassembles itself. Dwight explains that since all his undead have a part of his magic, he can freely switch to another body if one gets destroyed. Dwight stands before his army, declaring that as long as he has subordinates, he cannot be destroyed. A soldier exclaims in disbelief that it revived, but his superior orders them to keep shooting. Dwight informs them that he is done experimenting. Massive skeletal beasts charge forward at Dwight's command. He gives a simple order to his minions: devour them. Dwight's new body retrieves the bag from the ground. He notes that the attack did not damage its contents, and that his defensive magic is stronger now. Soldiers frantically try to raise the castle bridge to keep the undead out. Dwight watches them, stating that their struggle is pointless. Dwight unleashes a massive explosion, musing that his existence is quite different from the others. He knows that even if they try to overwhelm him physically, he can still turn the tides of battle. He and his skeletons walk over the fallen soldiers towards the castle. Dwight leads his army into the castle grounds. The undead horde quickly overwhelms the remaining guards. The massive doors to the castle are pushed open by the undead. The undead army pours into the castle's main hall. Dwight thinks to himself that he is familiar with the architecture, having been here many times. He focuses his senses to locate his target. A magical swirl emanates from his skull as he pinpoints the location. He determines the king is on the top floor and has not moved at all. He assumes the king foolishly believes his soldiers can handle the situation. Dwight calls him an idiot for thinking so. His skeletal form begins to ascend the grand staircase. Dwight stands before the large, ornate doors of the king's room. He senses the layers of barriers and the curse placed upon the door. A magical discharge erupts as another skeleton touches the door. Dwight deems the trap very clever. His own body begins to dematerialize and pass through the warded door. He reforms on the other side, having bypassed the defenses completely. With a powerful kick, Dwight shatters the doors from the inside. The king gasps in shock as the undead being enters his chambers. The king stands defiantly as the intruder's presence fills the room. He sneers, addressing the damned undead. He demands to know what its goal is. The skeleton reveals its name, Dwight Harvelt. He asks if the name rings a bell, causing the king's eyes to widen in shock. The king stares in utter disbelief at the skeletal figure before him, questioning if it could possibly be Dwight Harvelt. The LICH reflects that 10 long years have passed since their last encounter. Surrounded by his undead soldiers, Dwight acknowledges the king's shock, admitting that he is surprised himself. The king is pinned to the floor by the skeletons, struggling furiously. He screams at his captors, demanding they let him go and asking who they think they are. Dwight looms over the terrified monarch, declaring that he has returned from the Valley of the Dead to bring peace to this crooked world. The king dismisses this as nonsense. He shouts that countless people have been executed there, and not one has ever returned as an undead. A skeletal hand reaches towards the cowering king. Dwight presents a sack containing a skull and demands to know why they were ousted as traitors. He looks at the skull, mournfully stating that she did not deserve to die. A flashback shows Dwight and Claire walking towards the capital as he recalls how she always prayed for the world's peace. He reflects that she was the only one who truly deserved to be called a hero. The king scoffs, calling her an eyesore. Dwight reacts with cold fury, asking what he just said. The king explains that after the demon lord's death, the world changed, and heroes became nothing more than a nuisance. The king states that someone with her power was no longer needed and could have posed a threat to the kingdom. Dwight coldly asks if the king is admitting he executed her for his own self-interest and preservation. The king screams that he is the king and that it was their fault for not allowing themselves to be used. In response, Dwight begins to laugh. A close-up of the king's eye reveals he has lost his mind. Dwight declares he's heard enough. He orders his minions to shut the king up, and they seize him. The skeletons crush the king's head as he lets out a final scream. The king screams that he was right to execute Dwight. Dwight states that he acted on behalf of the kingdom and the world. The king's crown falls to the checkered floor. With the king dead, silence falls on the throne room. Dwight's gaze settles on an ornate sword mounted on the wall. A close-up view shows the ornate design of the sword. Dwight immediately recognizes the weapon as Claire's sword. He regards it as a precious memento. He removes it from its display, deciding to take it back. As Dwight holds the sword, power flows through him. He notes that the weapon feels as if he's been using it for years. He doesn't even need to swing it to confirm his mastery over it. He realizes that the miasma from the Valley of the Dead has granted him this power. It has infused him with the memories and experiences of all the corpses, allowing him to obtain all of the hero's sword techniques. Holding the blade, Dwight wonders if it is truly okay for him to use it. He recalls a memory of Claire thanking him for always standing beside her. A final memory of Claire's warm smile and words of thanks solidifies his decision to accept the sword as her parting gift. Armed with the hero's sword, Dwight walks through the conquered castle. The capital has been overrun by his undead forces. He descends the stairs, his new weapon in hand. The royal capital has fallen. Dwight reflects that after 10 long years, his first goal is finally complete and he can move on to the next phase. He decides to use the conquered city as his new base of operations. Dwight sits upon the throne, the hero's greatsword resting against his shoulder, the new silent ruler of the fallen capital. Surveying the burning city, Dwight muses on the irony that the sage who fought the demon lord has now built an undead country. A lone carriage driver shields his eyes, sensing something is amiss as he approaches the capital city. Dark, ominous clouds swirl above the castle, and the driver stops, wondering what he is seeing. He pours wine into his mouth, but it spills uselessly through his skeletal jaw. Dwight tosses the bottle aside, acknowledging that as an undead, he can no longer eat or drink. He gazes down from the balcony at the city he now controls, its streets filled with his undead minions. The spreading miasma has turned the capital into a place uninhabitable for any living being. He recalls how the city was certainly brimming with life just the day before. Now the city is just like the Valley of the Dead, a thought that gives him pause but no regret. He reflects on the thought of all this being done by his own hands. Dwight watches from above, stating that this is merely the opening act. Dwight remembers the principle that when evil appears, humanity will unite against it. The threat of the demon lord was so great that it forced a unity that transcended all borders. He reflects that the balance of that equilibrium was thrown off by none other than them, the heroes. The only thing that awaited the world was civil war, an unsightly and endless carnage between countries. As soon as the demon lord was gone, the countries were at each other's throats, making peace an unthinkable concept. He has concluded that true world peace was only achieved when an immortal evil ruled over the world. Hence, he has decided on his path. Dwight declares that he will become the new demon lord. He clarifies that he does not plan to reduce the entire world to ashes, but he is determined that no one will find out his true intentions. He knows he cannot let himself be defeated by whoever he goes against first. His goal is to eternally strike fear into this world. This is the duty of the necessary evil, the one known as the Demon Lord. Dwight decides that a Demon Lord needs a proper army and that he wants servants. Though he already has many servants, what he truly wants is a servant with power. Multiple undead begin to fuse together. He uses his power to combine multiple undead into one powerful individual. This is one of the powers he obtained from the Valley of the Dead. A massive impact shakes the ground as the ritual concludes. Dwight observes the outcome. He quietly acknowledges the end result. A new undead being, Grom, rises from the dust and asks, "The one who created me, was it you?" He internally addresses a former hero, asking for permission to use the skills they once bestowed upon him. His gaze is fixed on his opponent. With a flash, he lunges forward, seeing an opening in his opponent's defense. The newly created Grom is caught off guard by the swift and powerful attack. Grom recoils in pain and surprise. Dwight lands a clean slice on his opponent. The blade passes through Grom's torso. Dwight explains that he has absorbed all of Grom's magic and miasma, leaving him powerless. Grom accepts his defeat and asks for death. Dwight refuses, stating he had a different purpose in creating him. Dwight extends a hand, offering Grom a position as his subordinate, preferring to respect his free will. He values the strength and ego of the undead and would appreciate his help. Grom accepts the offer, becoming Dwight's first powerful retainer. 3 days later, the castle cleanup is well underway, managed by Dwight's undead forces. Dwight sits at his desk, reflecting on how well his subordinates are doing. A knock at the door interrupts his work. Grom bursts in, enthusiastically announcing that he has prepared a meal for his demon lord. Dwight gently reminds Grom that he is unable to eat or drink. Realizing his foolish blunder, Grom is overcome with embarrassment. Grom quickly pivots, suggesting they choose a new outfit for Dwight. Dwight sighs, wondering how his formidable creation turned into such a fawning servant. Grom has become a loyal retainer whose former insubordination has vanished in favor of condescending behavior. Dwight reflects that Grom was impressed by his purpose and has become a loyal executive officer. When Dwight mentions he needs to go out for supplies, Grom vehemently objects. Grom insists such tasks are beneath the demon lord. He then begins frantically cleaning the room himself, eager to do anything his master asks. Dwight considers Grom to be both dexterous and knowledgeable. Grom was born from a combination of grudges and miasma, inheriting fragments of memories from the dead. Despite his peculiarities, Dwight considers him a trustworthy subordinate and turns his attention to other matters. He has already sent word of his arrival to all the kingdom's territories. The messages offer a simple choice: pledge allegiance or face invasion. Dwight wonders how the nations will respond to the manifestation of a new demon lord. He anticipates that they will react by forming a subjugation force. He resolves to prepare a fitting environment for a demon lord and find more allies like Grom. As he walks through the silent halls, Dwight acknowledges that his goal of true peace is still a distant reality. He pauses before a large crystal orb containing the skeleton of a woman. He reflects sadly that even his powers could not reanimate her. He questions whether her soul is refusing resurrection or if his own conflicting emotions are interfering. He vows to one day find a way to bring her back to life. Just then, Grom's voice calls out to him. Grom rushes in with a report. He informs Dwight that the nearest territory has sent an army heading for the King's Landing. Dwight expected the nobles would not stand idly by and would try to take back their capital. However, he is concerned that they dispatched a subjugation force in only 3 days. He decides to head there himself to show them that a demon lord has risen. Dwight decides to make an example of the army to be seen as a threat, leaving Grom in charge. Grom accepts with zealous determination, vowing to protect the castle with all his might. As Dwight departs, he thinks it would be best if the army just surrendered. Grom calls out for him to wait a moment. An army of knights marches across the plains. Suddenly, one of the soldiers looks to the sky, noticing a dark shape rapidly approaching. Dwight Harvelt descends from the clouds, clad in magnificent new robes, ready to face the subjugation force. It's revealed that Grom insisted on providing his master with a more fitting outfit for the special occasion. Now properly attired, Dwight prepares to show these mortals the true meaning of a demon lord. Elsewhere, one of the skeletal messenger birds is intercepted by Luciana, who wonders about the letter's contents. She reads the letter and learns about the rise of a new demon lord. Luciana smiles with sharp teeth, holding the bird's skull. She declares that this is the moment she has been waiting for. An army of about 20,000 soldiers marches across the plains, shielded by a holy magic barrier. Dwight watches them advance, deducing their intent to reclaim the capital. He questions how they managed to gather such a large army so quickly. He declares that he will not be kind enough to simply let them waltz into the capital. Dwight decides to crush their fighting spirit right then and there. He reasons that this would be the best outcome, preventing them from blindly marching into combat. Dwight is startled by an unexpected feeling. A giant skeletal hand trembles as it emerges from a fissure in the ground. He clenches his trembling hand, accepting that his path is set. He concludes that he must be prepared to slaughter all of them to make a statement. He remembers his battle with Grom, where he first learned to freely manipulate miasma. Dwight decides to use this moment as an opportunity for practical application of his new power. A large sphere of dark, crackling energy forms before Dwight. He decides to see how his new attack will fare. The soldiers below are confused and alarmed, wondering if it is an enemy attack. Arrows fired at the sphere are effortlessly drawn into its swirling mass. The dark sphere plummets towards the ground. It collides with the army's defensive barrier. A soldier cries out that the barrier is starting to break. The men panic, screaming that it's no use and there's no stopping it. The dark energy erupts in a massive explosion, consuming the army. A huge crater is all that remains, with survivors scattered and disoriented. The wounded cry out in pain and confusion, asking where the enemy is. From the corrupted ground, a skeletal hand emerges. The soldiers are overcome by the miasma, their bodies being corrupted as they cry out in terror. Dwight calmly observes the chaos, noting that all that remains is for the dead to rise and attack the living. A young soldier stands frozen in shock amidst the bodies of his comrades. He sees his fallen allies beginning to rise again as undead. He looks up to see the imposing figure of Dwight observing the carnage. Overcome with fear, the soldier finally breaks and runs for his life. The newly risen undead begin their pursuit of the living. The young soldier screams in terror as he runs. He glances back in fear at the approaching horde. The survivors scatter, trying to escape their former allies. Watching them flee, Dwight decides this is good enough. He lets them go, knowing they will spread word about his strength. He notes that it has been a decade since the last demon lord died. Looking over the scarred landscape, Dwight declares that the world must now know of the new threat to humanity's existence. He returns to his castle on the cliffside. He lands with enough force to crack the stone beneath him. He thinks about how his teleportation, once limited to his line of sight, can now go beyond that in his new body. He acknowledges the benefits of being undead, noting that his magic power does not feel depleted at all, and that controlling such a large army will allow for various strategies. Acting on a strange instinct, Dwight Harvelt commands his newly formed undead army to march towards the Valley of the Dead. The mindless soldiers obey without question, marching towards the edge of a massive cliff. His undead legion marches silently over the edge. They plummet into the deep, dark chasm below. Dwight watches the procession from the precipice. As the last of his soldiers fall into the abyss, Dwight feels a tremendous surge of energy. He realizes that in the very instant they threw themselves from the cliff, his own power began to increase, growing stronger yet again. Dwight now understands the connection. The Valley of the Dead is the source of his power, and his existence is reinforced by the miasma it generates. He decides he will continue to sacrifice the undead to further amplify his strength. Dwight believes his power is intrinsically tied to the Valley of the Dead. He anticipates that human forces will continue to assemble against him, but he is confident they now realize that overwhelming him with numbers is a futile effort. A knight receives this grim news, understanding that it is currently impossible for mortals to defeat him. He intends to maintain the threat of a demon lord's existence, believing it is the only way to ensure lasting peace among all humans. He gestures to his undead army, ready to set his grand plan into motion. Rather than returning to his castle immediately, Dwight flies over the desolate royal city he just conquered. He decides to take a walk through the streets, observing scenes of life abruptly frozen in time. The only inhabitants are the shambling undead, remnants of the city's former populace. He walks through the ruined city, now a grim landscape of crumbling buildings. Piles of skulls serve as a stark reminder of the city's fate. A memory of a time past, when children like Reid and Nina Evans ran freely, flashes in his mind. The contrast with the current desolation is stark. Though it pains him, he has no regrets, for this is the path he has chosen. Dwight fully embraces his new identity, declaring that the sage is no more. All that remains is an immortal, mass-slaughtering demon lord. With this final affirmation of his new self, he continues on his way. Upon returning to his stronghold, Dwight finds the castle's architecture has been drastically altered, now appearing far more sinister. Inside, a gargoyle guard is stunned by the sudden changes, while another voice calmly notes that they already know who the culprit is. Grom greets Dwight, moved to tears after witnessing his master's power through a scrying spell. Dwight questions the castle's new look. Grom proudly explains that he redesigned it to be a more fitting abode for a demon lord, ensuring its defenses were also thoroughly upgraded. Grom thinks to himself that if Dwight had a tail, it would be wagging right now. Dwight is visibly pleased with the changes. A subordinate reflects that while Grom acted on his own, he also employed powerful techniques to improve the castle's defenses, making them lethal to any uninvited guests. It is a reminder of how capable and terrifyingly motivated Grom can be. Overjoyed by the praise, Grom declares that the effort was worth it to be of use to his lord. Dwight thanks him for his work, but gently requests that Grom consult him before undertaking such major projects in the future. Suddenly, a group of shadowy, beast-like figures with glowing eyes appears before them. The sudden intrusion puts both Dwight and Grom on immediate alert. Using a detection spell, Dwight confirms the presence of uninvited guests. He tells an eager Gram to follow him. The two move swiftly to confront the intruders. The intruders are revealed to be a diverse group of beastmen. Their fierce and varied features flash into view as they prepare for a confrontation. Under the light of a full moon, Dwight and Gram stand ready. They squarely face the formidable group of beastmen who have breached their fortress. Gram simply calls the intruders a shameful bunch. Gram notes the intruders are a formidable force, finding it strange they approached undetected, likely using cloaking magic. Dwight asks Gram if he knows who they are. Dwight confirms that he knows them. He recalls that their paths had crossed once before, back when he was still alive. Luciana laughs, calling humans helpless idiots for being destroyed by the same demon lord they created after turning on the heroes who defeated the previous one. Dwight concedes that humans can be foolish, but insists there is still salvation for them. Luciana finds it curious that someone as disciplined as Dwight has not yet thought to destroy all of humanity. Dwight explains that his efforts are for maintaining the world's peace, an ideal he held while alive and still holds, as it is also another person's desire. Luciana states that she understands his goal and asks what his next move will be. Luciana proposes an alliance, offering her people's technology and strength in exchange for a land of peace, even suggesting the royal city as a reward for finding him loyal servants. Dwight acknowledges that their interests align, creating a win-win situation. One of Dwight's skeletal subordinates, Gram, asks to have a private word with his lord. Gram asks if Dwight really trusts the succubus, but Dwight replies that he knows her capabilities and that keeping an eye on her is enough. Dwight believes her demon army is an enticing asset as long as he is careful to prevent them from indiscriminately destroying humanity. Gram reluctantly agrees, stating that he will defer to his lord's decision. Dwight places a hand on Gram's shoulder, telling him that when the time comes, he will be relying on his power as well. Ecstatic, Gram declares that he will devote all of his energy to helping his lord. Dwight returns to Luciana and apologizes for the wait, informing her that they have reached a consensus. Dwight agrees to take Luciana and her people in, promising them a safe haven in exchange for their participation in his war against humanity. Luciana happily agrees that they have a deal. They shake hands to seal their new alliance. Luciana joyfully embraces him, declaring that she will be in his care. When Dwight asks why she is acting this way, Luciana admits that she likes strong guys. She explains it was the same with the previous demon lord. She became his subordinate because she fell in love with the powerful aura he had. Dwight forcefully pushes her away, calling her a damned succubus. Dwight and Gram stand atop a castle wall, looking down at a vast army of monsters. Luciana stands at the head of the monstrous horde, her arm raised. Gram identifies the succubus as the leader, and Dwight, recalling they've met before, asks who they are. The woman is identified as Luciana, one of the 4 heavenly kings and a subordinate of the late demon lord. Gram is shocked by this revelation. Dwight decides it is time to greet their guest. Luciana approaches and asks Dwight if he is the new demon lord, to which he replies that he is a self-proclaimed one for the time being. Luciana seems to understand, finding his answer interesting. Gram angrily rushes towards Luciana. Luciana playfully tells him not to say such scary things. Gram warns that he will behead her without hesitation if she continues her disrespectful behavior. Suddenly she stops, recognizing the scent of the magic coming from Dwight. Luciana excitedly asks if he is Dwight the Sage, confident she has hit the nail on the head. Enraged by her tone, Gram declares that she is asking for it, but Dwight tells him to stop. Dwight calmly tells Gram to leave the matter to him. Dwight addresses her as Luciana, remarking that it has been a while. She agrees, saying she has not seen him since the hero cut her in half, all while maintaining a look designed to rile up her opponents. Luciana remarks that Dwight has certainly changed, and asks if he is that old already. Dwight tells her she should already know that his transformation is due to the power of the Valley of the Dead. Finding the conversation exhausting, Luciana asks if they can come in so her troops can rest. Gram questions his lord's decision, but Dwight dismisses his concerns and agrees to guide them in. Dwight warns her that if anything were to happen, he would erase her with his full power. The threat sends a chill down Luciana's spine. She quickly recovers, laughing nervously and commenting that he has really changed. Luciana adds that she finds this version of him more charming than his human self. The monsters in Luciana's army react negatively to their surroundings. Luciana notes that the miasma in the city is quite thick. She observes that it's potent enough to affect her monsters. Dwight explains that he paid it no mind since only undead were present, but this concentration could be dangerous for living monsters. He decides that from this point on, only she will be permitted to enter. The group settles into an ornate room to talk. One of Dwight's subordinates asks Luciana once again what she is doing there. Luciana tells them not to be suspicious, claiming she and Dwight go way back, which provokes an outburst from Grom. Dwight calmly tells Grom to settle down. Dwight clarifies that while he and Luciana are acquaintances, their relationship was that of enemies. The use of the past tense were gives her pause. Luciana points out that the demon lord she used to serve is dead, and 10 years have passed since then. Dwight concludes that there is no reason for them to still be fighting. She questions his simple philosophy, asking why he did not consider that she might have come to take revenge for her previous lord. Dwight coldly replies that if that were the case, he would just turn them all into undead and put their corpses to good use. Luciana is momentarily silent after his threat. She then relaxes with a sigh, admitting she was just joking. She clarifies that their true purpose is to serve under the new demon lord, prompting Dwight to ask why. Luciana begins to explain that after the demon lord's death, the humans began to hunt down the remnants of his army. Without their supreme leader, the demons were unable to fight back effectively against the human forces. As one of the 4 heavenly kings, she decided to take her men into seclusion where humans would not find them. They did this while hoping for a new demon lord to appear, and she is relieved she does not have to take the title herself. She tells Dwight he is much stronger than the previous demon lord. Luciana admits her surprise that Dwight would be the one to become the new demon lord and asks what happened after his execution. Dwight replies that it is not a pleasant story. Grom stands protectively before his lord, warning him that the woman is a deceiver. Luciana calmly belittles Grom, stating she is only interested in the best. The two square off, with Grom vowing to make her unsightly while Luciana challenges him to come at her. Luciana and Grom clash, exchanging threats as their battle begins. Dwight observes the confrontation impassively. He decides to let them be for the moment and will inform Luciana's subordinates of their agreement. An army approaches a large fortified city. A human commander shouts orders, determined to defend their position. An undead army of skeletons prepares to attack. The undead horde crashes into the human defensive line. Human soldiers are cut down and shattered by the skeletons. Dwight reveals that his army of 120 is invading a northern city. Heavily armored ogres lead the charge, breaking the human formation. Dwight confirms that he has allowed Luciana's forces to participate in the attack. Dwight uses his transfer magic to strategically assault the kingdom. His forces continue their successful advance on the ground below. Content with the progress, Dwight laughs. Grom stands amidst the chaos, declaring himself the king of the undead. The city is engulfed in explosions and dark energy. Dwight calls out to Grom. Dwight cautions Grom, clarifying their objective is not total annihilation. He explains the true purpose is to create a common enemy to unite humanity. Grom reassures his lord. He confirms that the current attack is sufficient to demonstrate their overwhelming power. Dwight observes as Grom prepares to display his might. Luciana's ogres continue to tear through the city's defenses. A terrified noble learns that the invaders have broken through. He desperately commands his soldiers to buy him time. Dwight observes the selfish lord, who prioritized his wealth over his people. The lord lashes out verbally at the undead intruders. Grom promises the man a painful end. Dwight steps forward, telling Grom that he will deal with the lord personally. Dwight chokes the terrified lord, who screams in agony. He makes an example of the man's selfishness by ending his life. Holding the man's bloody remains, Dwight reflects on his desire to end humanity's self-destructive behavior. The lord's body dissolves into a bloody mess. He gives the surviving family a simple choice: submit and live. Dwight turns to leave. He reflects on his strategy of repeated invasions to secure submission. A map illustrates his progress, showing the subjugated territories now considered part of the demon lord's land. The common people are permitted to live as they did before, ensuring their obedience. This is all part of his grand plan to unite humanity against a common foe, himself. Luciana greets Dwight, remarking on the speed of his victory. Dwight remains silent as she approaches. A montage shows the combined forces of ogres and undead overwhelming the enemy. Dwight tells Luciana that the operation was a success thanks to their excellent subordinates. Luciana smiles, pleased with the compliment. She proudly states that she trained them all personally. She invites Dwight for a private tea, prompting an immediate and suspicious reaction from Graham. Graham warns Dwight about Luciana's supposed plan, which she doesn't entirely deny. Dwight, tired of the bickering, tells them to be quiet. Luciana vehemently denies that there were any instances of flirting. Luciana and Graham continue their standoff. Dwight comments on their apparent camaraderie. He muses that with his current forces, controlling the kingdom is inevitable. He declares that this is the start of an all-out war. Dwight, Graham, and Luciana stand together, a formidable trio ready to plunge the world into conflict. Dwight reflects that foreign countries are currently inactive, seemingly content to watch as the undead plague remains contained within the kingdom. Deciding to force their hand, he resolves to go on the aggressive and test how long they can maintain their detached mentality. Graham formally begins a war council to discuss the future of the Demon Lord's domain, with Dwight and Luciana in attendance. Graham asks if there are any problems with his report so far. The council is briefly interrupted when Luciana teases Graham about his monocle, calling it unsuitable. An angered Graham calls her a brat, but Dwight sternly tells them both to stop their bickering and continue the meeting. Graham clears his throat and resumes his report. He explains that most of the kingdom's territory has been taken over by the Demon Lord. He states that the internal conquest is effectively complete. The only remaining resistance is on the frontiers and in the lands of the major nobles. Graham notes that since the remaining nobles have their supply routes cut off, their surrender is only a matter of time. He declares their next targets are the surrounding countries. Dwight muses that the rulers of these nations likely still underestimate the threat he represents. Graham adds that there are some immediate concerns among them that need to be addressed. Graham points to the map, identifying a small region as the first of these concerns. He explains that this country, adjacent to the kingdom's southwest, has been acting suspiciously. Luciana confirms his report, revealing she has already taken the liberty of investigating it herself. Luciana reports that the small country has amassed an army on the kingdom's border. She believes they intend to seize the royal capital to expand their own territory. However, she admits that one detail about the situation bothered her. The troubling detail was how overly equipped the army was. Luciana concludes there must be another, larger country supporting them and pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Luciana admits she doesn't know who the puppet master is, but insists they cannot ignore the threat. Graham urges his lord to crush the nation for the sake of the future. He formally asks Dwight for his decision. Dwight resolves to use this as a stepping stone, making it clear to all of humanity that the Demon Lord is a global threat. Dwight makes his decision with cold finality. He will burn them into the ground. Both Graham and Luciana eagerly accept the order, ready to begin preparations for the assault immediately. Graham suggests an immediate invasion and occupation of the small country to expose the powers supporting it. Dwight agrees, deciding they will make their move that very night. The monsters in the royal capital are preparing for the upcoming battle, voluntarily holding mock fights to hone their skills. The city itself has undergone significant changes under its new rule. The miasma has been concentrated around the castle, making the capital habitable for demons. The vast undead forces are stored away in the castle's basement and warehouses. The formerly polluted areas are now beginning to function as major centers of activity again. Observing this, Dwight feels compelled to reciprocate his forces' enthusiasm. Throughout the ruined city, various monsters and demons work diligently to clear rubble and begin rebuilding. The monsters work hard to rebuild their new home. Dwight comments that the urban development is progressing well, and Luciana proudly states that she learned many pioneering skills over the last decade out of a need to survive. Dwight reflects that with the miasma problem solved, the former capital is now a bountiful land. He watches with satisfaction as his subjects work to revitalize the city and enrich their lives. Dwight's attention is caught by a human working among the demons. Luciana explains that the humans are her slaves. She adds that they have already adapted well to their new situation. Dwight simply acknowledges her report. A human cheerfully offers a pot of stew to a pig man, a wolf man, and two smaller creatures, all gathered together. Dwight the Lick looks on at the scene of humans and monsters coexisting. He reflects on this peaceful coexistence, admitting that he never thought he would witness such a scene, not even in his wildest dreams. From a high balcony, Dwight reflects on his longing for peace and his vow to protect his new citizens. He understands that the current peace is only possible due to the small number of people and limited space. He believes that while a global version of this concept would be amazing, such an endeavor would ultimately fail and burn to the ground. Dwight decides that the best way to achieve global peace is for a great evil to exist. Luciana listens to his words with a somber expression. Standing far apart in the grand hall, Luciana addresses the distant figure of Dwight. Dwight muses that his power has grown through massive invasions, yet he still lacks the strength to bring her back. Graham arrives and informs his lord that the time has come. Graham asks if Dwight is feeling unwell, but Dwight dismisses his concern, saying he was just lost in thought. Dwight looks down from the balcony at the immense crowd of monsters gathered below. He calls the view spectacular, while Graham notes that the crowd is eager for his speech. He begins his speech by listing the different types of followers in the crowd: warmongers, seekers of revenge, and those who owe him a debt. He concludes that while their reasons are diverse, their shared willingness to act is what unites them. Under the full moon, Dwight starts telling a story about a man from the past known as the Sage. Graham elaborates that the Sage fought alongside the hero through many battles. The listening monsters learn that it was these two humans who killed the previous demon lord. Dwight dismisses the importance of the Sage's end. He stresses that the truth the Sage found out is what is truly important. He proclaims that this world is twisted. He continues, stating that they are all just sacrifices, sidelines, and merely rocks. The monsters look up, listening intently to his words. He asks them if there is any way to resist the flow of fate. Pointing at his audience, he shouts that the answer is no. He vows that if the world ignores them, they will trample it underfoot. He declares that their march has begun and urges them to embrace evil. He announces the rise of the new demon lord, and the monsters roar in approval. The monsters let out a unified, guttural roar. Dwight proclaims that they will be the only absolute evil. With a piercing gaze from his one glowing eye socket, Dwight poses a final chilling question to his followers, asking if they have the resolve for the path he has laid out. The entire army of monsters erupts in a deafening roar, a clear and unified answer to their lord's question. Dwight approves of their response and commands them to show no restraint. The monsters eagerly await his command to unleash their power. He recognizes that this is it. They have become the embodiment of his terror. Graham approaches his lord, calling the speech breathtaking. Dwight reveals that he was just firing them up and that they are unaware of his true objective. Graham questions Dwight's decision to withhold the truth from them. Dwight explains that even allies cannot be told, as the information might leak. Dwight states he has decided to only tell a select few about his desire for true world peace. He fears that if this truth reached the humans, his existence as a demon lord would collapse. If they knew, he reasons, it would be impossible to strike true fear and a sense of impending doom into them. Graham observes that it is quite a difficult path. Dwight asks if Graham finds his plan foolish, to which Graham immediately objects. Graham reassures him, stating that there is no one as kind as his lord. Graham muses on the idea of his lord being called kind. A voice calls the idea of kindness a funny joke indeed. Looking out from a barred window at the distant city, the voice complains of boredom. In a stone cell, a shackled Henry Blacken rests with his hands behind his head, light streaming in from a high window. He wonders aloud if anything interesting will happen soon. A subordinate informs Dwight that the preparations for his departure are complete. Graham tells Dwight to leave everything to him, promising to handle any threats while he is away. Luciana expresses doubt about leaving the castle's defense to a pile of bones, prompting a retort about the risk of it being captured. The argument escalates as Luciana claims she is the most suitable protector, while the other succubus feigns fear. Frustrated by their bickering, Dwight demands silence, telling them they are both far too relaxed. A vast teleportation circle activates, engulfing the courtyard in magical light. The army is comprised of 200 monsters and 1,500 undead, a force Dwight feels is small but sufficient with his presence. He reflects on his decision to leave Graham and other subordinates in charge of defending the royal capital. Luciana declares her resolve to protect the demon lord and tells Graham to focus on the capital. Graham seems flustered, telling her she doesn't need to state the obvious. Addressing Dwight as demon lord, Luciana asks to hear his first command. Dwight's army suddenly appears on a bridge leading to an enemy stronghold as he issues his command to fight for survival and glory. The human defenders are stunned as the demon army appears out of thin air. Luciana is amazed by the incredibly accurate teleportation, noting that the Demon Lord's power exceeds their standards. She had been spying on the small country and knew they were potentially planning a surprise attack of their own. Dwight states that if he couldn't achieve this much, he would have no desire to be the evil of this world. Luciana questions if his plan is to force their surrender. Dwight affirms this, saying he doesn't mind a bloodless conclusion. Dwight begins to speak to the human soldiers below. Meanwhile, his own undead soldiers roar with defiance, eager for battle. He is cut off mid-sentence by the enemy's advance. A human commander yells for his army to charge. Seeing the charge, Dwight orders all his troops and magic units to attack immediately. He commands them not to let the enemy take another step. Luciana realizes that there is no way to win without bloodshed now. She remarks on the foolishness of humans for forcing the conflict. Dwight acknowledges that he is left with no choice. Dwight unleashes a powerful magical blast that tears the stone bridge apart. As the human forces fall into the river, Dwight gives his army the command to go forth and let loose. A commander on a ship spots the incoming threat and orders his men to shoot. He mocks the undead, thinking they are sinking into the water and cannot reach him. His expression changes to one of terror as a powerful tremor shakes his vessel. An army of undead begins to climb aboard the human ship. The commander watches in horror as his ship is overrun. Monsters leap from the broken bridge to join the assault on the fortress. A beastman easily cuts down a human soldier in the water. Luciana enjoys the chaotic scene, calling it a splendid view. She asks Dwight if he is not enjoying the sight of his subordinates in battle. With a menacing look, Dwight tells her to take things more seriously. He states that he is placing his trust in the monsters and will not participate in the battle for now. Dwight explains that the Demon Lord's army needs to experience the feeling of victory. Luciana counters that she is always serious and is getting drunk on the current situation, not the wine. Having gained control of the canal, the army prepares to push into the small country's territory. The monster army begins to overwhelm the human soldiers in a small village. Luciana finds the development amusing and questions if any humans can put up a fight. Dwight surmises that the enemy's plan to invade was improbable and that they must have been pressured by other countries. He resolves to find evidence of this by reaching the royal castle. Dwight Harvelt declares his intention to punish any country involved in the unnecessary scheming. He internally questions if this is what he truly wants, realizing his current power is not enough to begin a true subjugation of the Demon King's enemies. Luciana suggests they should just disintegrate this small country without delay to avoid complications. However, she quickly laments that such an easy victory would be boring, as she had hoped to find some strong opponents. Dwight silently reflects on his past as a human, remembering that there were only a select few individuals who could stand against an entire army of demons. Luciana correctly guesses he is thinking of the former hero or sage. Dwight acknowledges that although they have fought many battles in the kingdom, they have yet to encounter anyone of that caliber. Olivia notes that heroes are not born easily, citing the fact that a decade has passed without any new ones emerging. Luciana agrees, reminiscing fondly about the fun she had serving the late Demon King. Luciana teases Dwight, mentioning he was quite cute back in his human days. He sternly asks her to refrain from calling him that. She seems surprised he has discarded his human name. Dwight dismisses the topic as unimportant. Luciana insists that it does matter, telling Dwight that he is still himself, not just a demon lord. Her words seem to give him a moment of pause. Getting angry, Luciana asks if Dwight sees himself as a mere tool for a specific purpose. He replies that he sees no issue with that, as it is the optimal solution for achieving his goal. She shouts that this shouldn't be the case. She then asks him to tell her more about himself. Dwight dismisses her request, claiming they need to focus on the fight. Unconvinced, Luciana gestures to the carnage around them and then embraces him, pleading with him to value himself more. He agrees to make an effort. Luciana accepts his answer for now, telling him she will hold him to it. She then offers to be someone he can confide in about problems he can't discuss with his undead subordinates. Dwight agrees to rely on her when the time comes. She then leaps into the air and prepares a devastating magical attack. The attack strikes the city below with immense force. Beaming with joy, Luciana encourages him to do so. Olivia reports that the streets are clear, surmising that the enemy is planning to make them lay siege to the castle. Dwight considers their response naive and instructs Olivia to inform Grom of their progress. He then decides to return to his main body immediately. Dwight's consciousness begins to transfer from the skeleton in the carriage. He notes that as a result of his training, he can now transfer between any undead under his control without destroying the previous body. He briefly wonders why every skeleton he possesses turns black. Dwight startles Graham, who is shocked by his lord's sudden appearance. Dwight explains that he came to inform them of their progress, and Graham thanks him. Graham and another subordinate are confident, stating that the humans stood no chance and that their plans are on schedule. They decide to keep watch over the royal capital and plan a celebration for when their lord returns. Luciana returns to Dwight. She reports that the battle is over and most of the capital is under their control. However, she informs him that they have run into a problem. There is resistance coming from a dungeon, and their undead forces are being mowed down. Dwight finds this unexpected, having anticipated resistance from the heavily defended castle instead. He notes that some bloodthirsty individuals must have gathered in the dungeon and asks how many there are. Luciana gravely informs him there is just one. Luciana elaborates that this single person is managing to fend off their entire army. As the lone warrior carves a path through the undead, Luciana speculates that he might be on the level of a hero. The warrior roars defiantly, shouting that if they want to kill him, mere numbers will not be enough to bring him down. A wistful thought reflects on a different path, one that should have been taken. Luciana asks Dwight if he has any idea who their powerful adversary is, but he deflects the question. Observing the raging man below, she realizes it's no surprise they weren't aware of him. She notes that the man was imprisoned before the battle even began, and his wild rage makes him uncontrollable. As Henry Blacken rampages through the undead, it becomes clear he is a madman. Dwight and Luciana observe the destruction from above. Henry Blacken spots Dwight, identifying him as the master of the undead. Tired of fighting weaker foes, he bellows a challenge for a real fight. As Henry Blacken charges forward, Dwight calmly accepts the challenge. Blacken's punch connects with incredible force, shattering part of Dwight's skull. Luciana cries out in alarm for her demon lord. The force of the blow sends Dwight reeling backward. Disappointed by his opponent's apparent fragility, Henry calls out. He demands a more entertaining fight. Dwight retaliates with a massive, skull-shaped magical attack that hurtles towards Henry. The magic attack explodes with immense force. Luciana rushes to Dwight's side, concerned for his well-being. He reassures her, noting with interest that his opponent doesn't use magic. Dwight reflects on the pain, shocked that his defenses were shattered by a single blow. Henry examines his scorched hand, exclaiming that he was nearly cooked. Luciana watches in disbelief, realizing Henry stopped the massive fireball with his bare hands. Luciana marvels at the man's power, comparing it to that of a hero. Dwight reveals his identity, Henry Blacken, a man once chosen as a candidate to slay the demon lord. Henry Blacken, an undefeated warrior, was once known as the man closest to killing the demon lord. Luciana prepares to join the battle. She confirms her readiness to fight. Dwight sternly orders Luciana to stay away from the fight and leave immediately. As Luciana withdraws, Henry charges Dwight once more. Henry is suddenly caught off guard, telling him to hold up. Dwight notes that Henry hesitates to make obvious attacks. He concludes that his tactics are very simple. Henry's strategy is to receive attacks with extraordinary sturdiness and then counter with overwhelming strength. Dwight considers that even a sudden frontal assault is ineffective. He realizes that Henry instinctively responds to any attack. Dwight leaps back to create distance from Henry. He wonders how Henry can possess such power without relying on magic. He unleashes a torrent of dark energy across the battlefield. Henry punches through the magical assault. Dwight deduces that unlike himself, Henry possesses no special abilities and is incapable of altering magic. Henry unleashes an aura of pure physical power. Dwight concludes that despite his extraordinary strength, this man has no weakness. As Dwight's toxic miasma fills the air, an observer wonders if it will be too much for Henry. The miasma is potent enough to turn ordinary people into the living dead, but Henry's vitality resists it. Dwight identifies Henry Blacken as a human who is not affected by the miasma. Dwight proposes a bet. A confused Henry questions what he is talking about. Dwight states his prize for winning the combat: Henry must join the demon lord's army. Henry agrees that if he loses, he will fulfill any of Dwight's wishes. Dwight reflects on Henry's character, a man who could have escaped his 10-year imprisonment at any time but chose not to. Henry Blacken roars his condition for victory. He wants command of the Demon Lord's army. Henry explains that since his life as a prisoner is over, he thinks it would be fun to fight the entire world. Dwight is taken aback by this antisocial reasoning. Dwight finds the scale of Henry's ambition to be far too much. Dwight tells Henry that the role of the Demon Lord is not a job for an unprepared skeleton, doubting he could make it. He asks Henry directly if he is prepared for such a job. Henry replies with absolute certainty that he is. Dwight asks if Henry will take the bet, reminding him that no one capable of replacing him exists. He demands Henry's answer. With a wild grin, Henry declares that he can't miss this kind of fun. Henry shouts that they will decide the winner of the fight right now, plowing through a horde of skeletons. His fists connect with the undead, shattering them instantly. Dwight unleashes a massive shockwave, surprising Henry. Henry realizes it's a widespread surface attack and that he has no choice but to defend himself. Henry grits his teeth, acknowledging the power of the attack. He digs his hand into the stone floor to brace against the force. Dwight gathers his magical energy for another assault. Dwight sees a frenetic obsession with victory in his opponent's eyes. He admits that Henry's strength is far beyond any common sense. Dwight reflects that he probably wouldn't have wanted Henry as an enemy in his past life. The force of the clash begins to fracture Dwight's own skeletal hand. Henry continues his charge, pushing through the ongoing attack. He smashes through the ground, undeterred by the magical force. Henry is thrown back by another blast of energy. With a manic expression, Henry questions if Dwight is serious. Dwight declares that he can win the battle by hitting him with everything he has. A powerful blow lands, shattering pieces of Dwight's body. Despite the damage, Dwight stands firm against a wild-eyed Henry. The battle's intensity causes the prison walls to explode outward. Dwight declares that even if he loses his arms from this attack, he has no problem with the sacrifice. He focuses a massive amount of energy into his hands. The power is so great that it begins to destroy his own arms as he unleashes it. Dwight reflects on Henry's extraordinary strength and excellent fighting instincts, concluding that he must trap him in a way that he cannot escape. As his attack carves a path through the rubble, Dwight states that he can now make it. With his arms gone, Dwight prepares his final move. The landscape is utterly destroyed by their battle. Dwight notes that Henry is someone who does not die easily, even after being hit like that. He looks on at the still-standing Henry, muttering in disbelief. Henry wipes some blood from his lip, a confident smirk on his face. Dwight internally admits that he really does not understand his opponent. Suddenly, serpentine bindings erupt from the ground and ensnare Henry, who realizes the situation is bad. Henry, caught in the bindings, asks if Dwight is kidding. Dwight explains that it is a multiple spell from a forbidden curse that he will never be able to get rid of. Henry protests, calling it too convenient and accusing Dwight of joking. Dwight calmly announces that this is the end. Dwight stands over the defeated Henry and asks if he has won the battle. Henry gives up, admitting that Dwight is someone he does not want as an enemy. Dwight addresses him by his full name, Henry Blacken, and declares that from this day forward, he will be his subordinate. Dwight asks if he has any objections. Henry cheerfully replies that he has no objections and that it is nice to meet him. Dwight reflects that a man with Henry's power could have defeated the previous Demon Lord, just like another person and himself had done before. A narrator muses that when evil threatens the world, a hero always appears, but fate itself is always against him. This story repeats itself in any time. Henry Blacken explains that he was tired of his life as a prisoner and planned to escape within the year. He clarifies to Dwight that he has no real ambitions or goals and only considered becoming the Demon Lord because it seemed interesting. Dwight realizes Henry just wanted to fight because he was bored, a conclusion that surprises Henry. Henry proudly declares himself to be a crazy fighter who is always confident in any battle. A woman with horns named Luciana greets Dwight, informing him that the area is safe for exploration. She confirms that she checked the location herself to ensure its safety. Henry asks about two dazed-looking men with blank expressions. Luciana explains she has enchanted the leaders of the country, turning them into puppets under her control. Dwight acknowledges her skill, noting that it's a typical ability for a succubus and that it is not bad at all. With the leaders under their control, they can now easily gather all the information they possess. Luciana asks Henry if he also brought a certain person with him. Henry confirms that he did, believing it was a good decision. He then cheerfully greets another one of their companions. Dwight asks Henry where the things he wants to get back are located. Henry believes his confiscated items are likely in a treasure trove on the castle's top floor. Upon entering the room, they are met with a massive pile of treasure. Luciana is overjoyed at the sight of the treasure, while Dwight remains unimpressed. She playfully puts on a crown and asks Dwight how she looks, but he dismisses her. Meanwhile, Henry excitedly announces that he has found what he was looking for. Henry proudly holds up a bow made of dragon bone. He explains that the weapon is unique in the entire world and expresses how desperately he wanted to get it back. It is revealed that Henry's true class is that of an archer. Eager to test his bow, Henry says he just needs 1 or 2 shots, though Dwight notes he needs arrows first. He fires an arrow from the castle, striking a distant tower. The group watches from a destroyed balcony as Henry prepares his shot. He carefully draws the dragon bone bow, aiming at a distant target. His expression is one of intense focus. Henry draws his bow, which begins to glow with immense energy. He releases the shot with tremendous force. The arrow streaks towards a distant tower. The arrow flies towards a large building in the distance. It hits a tower, causing a massive impact. The resulting explosion shatters the structure. From afar, the destruction is seen as a huge plume of smoke rises from the city. Henry complains that his arm has become a little dull from disuse. Dwight observes that it is still a strong arm. Dwight muses that the impossible shot was a result of Henry's unique skill and powerful bow. Dwight asks Henry to lend him the arrow, and Henry agrees, assuming he'll need the bow too. Dwight states that the arrow is all he needs. He grips it tightly, preparing to throw it with his own strength. Dwight hurls the arrow, which flies with incredible speed and power, causing a massive explosion on a distant mountain. The resulting explosion carves a massive crater into the side of a mountain. Henry is left speechless, exclaiming that Dwight must be kidding him. Luciana playfully tells the demon lord that he missed by a little. Dwight considers trying again with less energy. The massive explosion causes panic in a nearby village, with residents fearing an attack by the demon lord. A soldier orders the villagers to evacuate, but another wonders if there is any safe place to go. The soldier declares that anyone who surrenders is a fool whose fate is to burn in hell. Some villagers retreat to a church, praying to God for mercy. A young girl stands in a field of flowers, pleading for holy help. A young soldier named Reed Evans runs towards his sister, Nina, believing the demon lord may have attacked. He tells her the place is no longer safe and they must evacuate, but she asks if he will be coming with her. Reed explains that as a soldier, he has a duty to stay and protect everyone. Reed admits that he is terrified, but feels he has to fight if the demon lord is really there. He tries to reassure Nina not to worry, but she interrupts, shouting that he will definitely die. Nina explains her worry, stating that he is really weak and soft. Reed concedes that he may indeed be weak. Reed believes he could be like the brave hero from 10 years ago who defeated the previous demon lord. He holds Nina's hand tightly, telling her not to worry. Reed looks at his sister with determination, promising to protect her with his life. Nina smiles and tells him that she is counting on him. The two siblings make a pinky promise. Suddenly, a voice calls out for Reed Evans, ordering him to return to his place. Henry Blacken marvels at the bustling city, surprised to see it filled with monsters. The LICH Dwight asks if Henry has ever visited the royal capital before. Henry recalls a past visit as a mercenary, admitting that he finds the current scene quite impressive. Luciana questions why Henry isn't angered by the knowledge that monsters destroyed this land. Henry nonchalantly replies that since humans kill each other, he doesn't see a difference and doesn't care about race. He views the world as a simple place where killers kill and the killed are killed. Henry explains that his philosophy is precisely why he joined the demon lord's army. Luciana smiles, unable to refute his logic. She seems to accept Henry in her own way. Dwight explains his vision to create a world where everyone can accept their differences and coexist naturally. Impressed, Henry asks if Dwight built this place himself. Dwight denies it, and Luciana explains that the person Dwight left in charge handled the modifications. A large, bull-skulled creature named Graham rushes forward, declaring he has been waiting for his lord's arrival. His excitement turns to fury when he spots Henry, demanding to know who allowed a human inside the castle. Dwight tries to calm the enraged Graham. Meanwhile, Henry offers a cheerful and casual introduction. Graham angrily warns Henry not to speak to him so casually. Luciana tells Henry not to worry, as Graham's sudden changes in humor are common. Henry finds the situation amusing, noting the captain must have a difficult job. Dwight admits he's enjoying Graham's reaction. Dwight muses that he trusts Graham because he never causes a mess that Dwight cannot control. Henry challenges Graham to a shooting contest to decide who is the best subordinate in the army, a bet Graham readily accepts. Luciana remarks to Dwight that she finds it embarrassing to see Henry and Graham getting along in their own strange way. When she asks Dwight what's on his mind, he dismisses it as nothing. Henry has taken to training the monster soldiers in archery, commending one on a good shot. 50 days have passed since Henry joined, and Dwight observes his progress from a balcony. Dwight notes Henry's incredible progress on the battlefield. Henry has proven to be a remarkable instructor, significantly strengthening the army. His performance in battle has been flawless, leaving no enemy alive. The monsters have come to look at him with complete respect. Dwight reflects that while he is almost immortal, he is not almighty, and the army must be developed. He believes that doing so will be the cornerstone of world peace. A flashback reveals a chaotic battlefield where soldiers are being slaughtered. A horrified Reed Evans witnesses the carnage. He desperately calls out to his brother. Reed yells his sister's name as she is surrounded by enemies. Nina screams for her brother's help. Reed screams in anguish. He recalls that he had always believed in destiny. He thinks of Nina. Luciana reports to Dwight that a small country's lands are being stolen by its neighbors. She explains they are using the Demon Lord's attack as a pretense to steal territory and resources. Enraged by the audacity of the humans, Dwight calls them stupid. He declares he will attack at dawn and wonders if they think another hero can defeat him. An injured subordinate kneels before Dwight, struggling to deliver a report as Dwight asks what happened. In a flashback, Reed is fatally wounded. Amidst the destruction, a voice questions how this is possible. Memories of happier times between Nina and Reed flash by. Nina smiles warmly in a fond memory. The horrific image of her death is reflected in Reed's eye. A colossal pillar of light erupts from the ground, signifying an immense release of power. A lone figure stands amidst the aftermath, their massive sword glowing as an enemy dissolves into dust before them. Bloodied and broken, Reed cradles Nina's lifeless body, his eye filled with rage and despair. Seated on his throne, Dwight contemplates the one who has now appeared, the hero. In a grand hall, Graham kneels, acknowledging that the prophesied figure has finally appeared. Dwight smiles faintly. He extends a silent invitation. At the frontiers of a small kingdom under attack by the Demon Lord's army, an ordinary soldier suddenly awakened a hidden power. He fought back against the relentless hordes of the living dead, overwhelmed by the holy light of his own true power. Graham apologizes to his lord for his previous failure. Dwight tells him not to worry, explaining that if a new hero truly has appeared, it's not something Graham could handle. Graham is taken aback by Dwight's lack of surprise. Dwight asserts that he is the only one capable of fighting this new hero. Dwight calmly states that the birth of a new hero in this era, possibly different from the last, does not surprise him. He reflects on his past, a time when he saved the world from the previous Demon Lord, only to become the new one, and wonders if this hero has awakened solely to confront him. Dwight senses that the very will of the world seems intent on burying him. Graham listens with concern. Graham declares that he will not stand by and quietly wait for his lord's death. Dwight stands, stating that he has a purpose he must achieve, even if it means defying the entire world. He knows he must act before the new hero grows more powerful. Dwight resolves to destroy the new hero, and Graham vows that when the moment arrives, he will be the one to carry out the deed. Graham implores Dwight to choose him, promising to unleash the Demon Lord's full power upon the hero. Dwight then turns his attention to Luciana, who also eagerly accepts the challenge. With his subordinates ready, Dwight contemplates his foe. Dwight decides he will personally confront the new hero, feeling that this will finally make him a true Demon Lord. He gazes at a skull in an orb, wondering what a certain person from his past would think of him now. Elsewhere, a woman named Claire defines a hero as someone chosen by fate itself. She explains that a hero grows through adversity and in the end, achieves a miracle. It is a pattern she has seen before. Dwight takes up a greatsword, revealing he has been preparing for this moment. Dwight steps onto a balcony, looking out over the city below. He asks if they are ready. Luciana appears, enthusiastically confirming she is in perfect condition and can always be counted on. Dwight muses that Luciana was always a formidable foe during the previous Demon Lord's era, one who always gave him trouble. Dwight asks Luciana how she is feeling. Puzzled, she asks why he wants to know. He explains that he is simply curious about her feelings. Luciana considers his question and replies that she feels very calm now. Luciana elaborates, suggesting that becoming immortal may have dulled her heart. However, she feels even calmer now than when she was human, as if she has shed a shell and removed more than just her skin. Dwight playfully asks if she is flirting with him. The question startles Luciana. He then pinches her cheek, saying there is something else he wishes to ask. He asks if she thinks anyone could laugh at a face like his. Luciana erupts in laughter, exclaiming that of course they would, as no one could resist laughing at a pile of bones. Luciana apologizes for laughing so much, admitting she got a little carried away. She reflects that she should have treated Grom better, considering he looks after her despite her hostility. She then tells Dwight that he is not the only funny one, adding that Grom is also hilarious when she catches him talking to himself. Luciana mentions that compared to Grom, the archer Henry is far more sullen, recalling how he was complaining about wanting to eat high-quality meat. Dwight remarks that this sounds exactly like Henry. Meanwhile, Henry walks away, pondering if he should focus on more important matters and acknowledging that he may one day need to depend on his new lord. Dwight notes that Luciana's concern for him is relaxing. He affirms his determination, stating that he is already determined and will no longer hesitate. Luciana reminds him that he must fulfill his duty as Demon Lord. She encourages Dwight to rely on his subordinates when things get dangerous. Dwight calmly agrees to her request. Luciana expresses her gladness at hearing his words. She reflects on how they were once enemies but are now good friends. As she flies off, Dwight finally begins his preparations. Dwight explains that he will not let his monsters die with him and will leave them in the royal capital. The main assault force will consist of only 2,000 undead soldiers. His highest subordinates will also be participating in the battle. The Beastmen monsters cheer loudly at the news. Dwight stands firm in his decision, declaring that he will not sacrifice anyone. The army roars in approval as Dwight stands before them. As night falls, the time for the army of the living dead to march has finally arrived. At dusk, Dwight stands with his commandos and the undead army, declaring that this is the perfect time to attack. Dwight informs his group that according to recent intelligence, the hero is waiting inside the fortress. He calls to Henry, who confidently accepts his mission. Henry vows to sound the alarm. His arrow strikes a tower on the fortress wall, causing a massive explosion. A fortress tower crumbles from Henry's long-range assault. Dwight observes that the entire fortress could fall if the attack continues. He then turns to Grom, telling him it is his turn to act, and Grom acknowledges the order. Grom unleashes a wave of dark energy. The dark magic sweeps over the fortress walls. Soldiers on the ramparts cry out that it's an enemy attack and order everyone to move. One soldier screams in panic that he can't breathe. The dark miasma spreads across the fortress grounds. Dwight commends Grom on a job well done. Luciana asks if they should proceed with the sabotage, and Dwight confirms that everything is ready. From within the besieged fortress, a long-haired elf woman watches as another part of the wall is destroyed by a powerful blast. Atop the ruins, a lone figure appears, wondering if his adversary has arrived. The hero, Reed Evans, stands amidst the rubble, his expression grim and determined as he surveys the battlefield. He faces the approaching army of the dead. Reed raises his holy sword, which glows with immense power. He swings his sword, unleashing a massive arc of pure energy that cuts across the landscape. The powerful slash tears through the ground and Dwight's undead forces, carving a path of destruction. The attack culminates in a blinding explosion of light, engulfing Dwight and his forces. Dwight calls out to Grom. Dwight declares that he will deal with the hero himself. He instructs his subordinates to focus on making the fortress fall. Grom accepts the command, telling Dwight to call him immediately if something happens. He wishes his lord good luck. With incredible speed, Dwight appears directly behind the surprised Reed Evans, ready for their confrontation. Dwight tells Reed that he is a brave and powerful hero. He acknowledges that Reed is certainly someone worthy of a fight. On a ruined fortress wall, Dwight materializes before a young man, confirming he is the hero and stating he has business with him. The hero, Reed Evans, recognizes the lick with shock. He grips his sword tightly in anger. Reed Evans erupts in fury, screaming and identifying Dwight as the Demon Lord. Reed lunges to attack, but Dwight effortlessly evades him. Dwight remarks that fighting on the wall would cause too many casualties. A determined Reed suggests they change the battlefield. The soldiers below recognize Dwight as the Demon Lord. The men rally to attack their enemy. Dwight dismissively tells them to go away. Reed shouts at him to stop his interference. Dwight unleashes a wave of dark magic, instantly killing the soldiers. Reed watches in horror and rage, screaming at Dwight for his cruelty. The force of Dwight's attack blasts Reed and the bodies of the fallen soldiers from the fortress wall. The explosion carries them far from the fortress into a desolate field. Dwight calmly observes their new battleground. Dwight reflects that the hero's earlier attack was potent enough to damage his soul and hinder resurrection. As Reed gets to his feet, Dwight becomes certain that this hero was chosen specifically to kill him. With Luciana and Graham leading the assault, Dwight knows the fortress will be no problem for them. He turns his full attention to the hero, understanding that the rest is up to him. Dwight summons a barrage of swords around him, telling Reed that he will demonstrate how far he is willing to go to defy fate. Reed looks on in shock at the display of power. The swords rain down on Reed, who is wounded by the assault. He cries out as he desperately tries to fend off the relentless attack. Reed manages to block the final barrage of attacks. As Dwight lands nearby, he asks why. Reed demands to know why Dwight is doing all of this. Reed demands answers for Dwight's actions. He reasons that it is only natural for people to seek out the reason behind such senseless killing. Dwight's response is simple: he does it because he is the Demon Lord. Reed reacts with pure rage. He shouts that countless people, including his family, have died because of him. Reed reveals the painful memory of having to kill his own little sister with his own hands. Dwight listens to his pained confession and simply acknowledges it. Reed continues his tirade, listing the countless tragedies Dwight has created by invading towns with his undead army and razing cities with magic, questioning the weight of guilt on his shoulders. Dwight states that he is aware of all the suffering he has caused. Reed laughs bitterly in response. He calls him the quintessential Demon King, whose heart is immune to pain. With renewed determination in his eyes, Reed glares at his opponent. He formally introduces himself as the hero, Reed Evans. He declares that he will follow his destiny and defeat the Demon Lord. As Reed stands ready to fight, Dwight sees a reflection of his former self in the hero's determined gaze. He remarks internally that he used to have the same look in his eyes. The two adversaries face each other, their resolve steeled as they prepare to clash. Yelling, Reed charges forward. He calls Dwight irritating as he launches his attack. Their swords meet in a furious clash. Sparks fly as they engage in a high-speed battle. Reed presses his assault with a fierce and desperate look on his face. He is determined to overwhelm his opponent. Dwight is surprised to find that Reed is not only keeping up with his speed, but is actually getting faster. He realizes with astonishment that the hero is growing stronger in the middle of their fight. Dwight reflects on the nature of a hero, a true enforcer of justice, wielding a miracle-like power that defies all logic to destroy evil. He is reminded of a previous hero he faced, one who possessed the same kind of power and resolve. Reed stumbles back, exhausted from the fight. Dwight correctly guesses that the hero is scared. He tells him it's a natural emotion and nothing to be ashamed of. Dwight internally concedes that after clashing blades, he is certain Reed's impressive swordsmanship is the result of tremendous training and real combat experience. Standing atop a pile of monstrous forms, Dwight tells Reed that the gap between their abilities is abysmal. Reed tells Dwight to shut up. Refusing to yield, he struggles to his feet, shouting that he could never forgive him. Reed passionately declares that once he defeats the Demon Lord, the world will finally be at peace. Dwight scoffs at the naive sentiment. Reed questions the 10 years of peace. Tears stream down his face. He screams, asking why his sister Nina had to die. A memory of her gentle smile flashes in his mind. Dwight reflects internally that the hero has done nothing wrong. He believes that if anyone is hopeless in this situation, it is him. He acknowledges that instilling fear and murdering humans is not right. Waging a full-scale war using their own corpses is also an unforgivable act. Even so, he has his reasons. There is something he wants to change. Even if it is built on a rocky foundation and requires him to become the Demon Lord, he wants to unite humanity. Dwight tells Reed that peace cannot be realized on ideals alone. He urges him to give up. He tells him he has no chance of winning. But Reed struggles, refusing to surrender. Gathering the last of his strength, Reed prepares for a final charge, vowing that he is going to defeat Dwight and save the world. With a powerful roar, he unleashes a massive spinning slash attack. The attack is immense, carving through the landscape. Dwight braces himself, acknowledging that the hero possesses some real power. With a surge of his own power, Dwight manages to block the hero's devastating final blow. Reed leaps high into the air, bringing his sword down for a finishing strike. He screams that this is the Demon Lord's end. Dwight knows that if he were to let things be, the Holy Sword would indeed vanquish the Demon Lord of this era. But he also knows that history would simply repeat itself. In a world without a Demon Lord, the hero would be deemed a threat and eventually disposed of, leading to more bloodshed. The hero would ultimately be killed by the very humans he sought to protect. Dwight declares that he will not allow such a future to come to pass. He counters Raid's attack, gravely wounding him. The hero collapses in defeat. Raid looks up in despair. Dwight proclaims that for this era, the Demon Lord will never die. Surrounded by an army of summoned swords, Dwight looms over the defeated hero, announcing that the story of good and evil ends here. Reed can only look on in terror. Declaring himself the Demon Lord, Dwight promises to show the hero what true despair looks like.